Hello there, it's Angela Rasmus, and welcome to episode 59 of the Your Next Chapter podcast. Thanks for tuning in with me today. Well, this week I'm having a wholehearted conversation with the lovely Karenna Alexander from the Big Apple, New York City. It's definitely one of those cities that's on my bucket list. I think I watched too many episodes of Sex and the City when I was younger, and I have this sort of vision of what it's going to be like to visit the city. But I digress. This conversation I'm looking forward to sharing with you today really is all about the topic of you just never know where your next chapter is going to take you. Sometimes when we're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and starting our careers, we can be in one industry and we can end up in a completely different one as the years go by, and we are called into what we see as our true work in the world. Now, Karenna is no exception. In fact, she's a brilliant example of that. She's got a real background in journalism, serious journalism. Now, she never expected that the flavour of how she was showing up in the world would change quite so dramatically. She was in broadcasting and a hard news journalist, as she described herself to me. But alongside what was going on is that the whole world of media as we know it was changing. Now, we all know with the advent of social media and the internet, it has changed for so many people. I used to work in news myself, not on the editorial side, on the marketing side, of course, but I saw from the outside how much the ranks of journalists have been devastated by a lot of the changes online. But in lots of ways, Karenna did see this coming, but more importantly, she felt a change coming. She was no longer really satisfied with what she was doing. Does that sound familiar, guys? And started a business on the side, helping people in relationships, a love doctor, and helping people create better boundaries and have more meaningful partnerships. A complete change from where she started from. But that's not the most interesting part of the story, although it's really fascinating. The part that I'm sure you'll be able to relate to enormously was Karenna's initial fears about stepping into the business world. Now, as she said that, learning the art of business was a real challenge. It was scary. She had no experience in business. She'd never taken a business course. She had no sales experience, none of those things. Like so many of us, she was completely focused on delivering her service, on really being of high service and help to the women in her audience. But she had to learn the art of business as well. Now, she talks very much about that fear, how she stepped through it, the ways in which she started to get her message out, the type of activities that helped her build that business and connect with her most aligned clients, taking one step at a time, asking for help when she needed it, and the tools and the tactics that really got her business off the ground. It's a fabulous story. I'm sure you'll enjoy it and also learn some great tactics that you can implement into your own business. So I hope you enjoy it very much, and I'll talk with you again very soon. Take care. Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted business strategy. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. Tune in each week for marketing, mindset, and personal growth strategies, along with inspiring stories from women around the world who are creating new businesses and lives that are personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. If you're looking to create a business and life you love, you're in great company. Let's find out what will unfold in your next chapter. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here.
So my next chapter began when I had a problem. And often I find people who are really good coaches kind of got started because they had an issue that they had to solve and they did everything they could to figure it out. And then they started helping others because they learned so much in their journey. And that's sort of how I started. I went to school for journalism. I had a graduate degree also in journalism. So 2 journalism degrees. And that's what I did for quite a while. I was an editor, a reporter for quite a long time. I covered hard news and crime and legal issues. And, but then I remember getting very, having some trouble with men. And I noticed a certain pattern. And this is when I was in my late 20s. And thank God I read this book that was very transformational for me. And I read the book. I actually contacted the authors and asked them to teach me everything they knew. They coached me, and then they offered a certification course in coaching. So it was a dating coaching course, and that was the first time I'd ever used a coach in my life. I didn't even know much about coaches back then, but it was just one of those things that I just was obsessed with, helping women. And this is while I was a reporter in a newsroom. So I didn't do it full time, and I didn't even really try to make it a business. It was just something I loved. And so I did it for years until the journalism industry. I don't know how it is in Australia, but in the US, it really got hurt in 2008. And newsrooms were cutting and cutting and cutting. And I realized I didn't want to be part of an industry that was having such difficulty. As much as I loved it, and I loved the writing and I loved reporting, I started just thinking I wanted to do something that I was really, really passionate about, but also something where I could make more money. Journalism is a really fun career, but it can take a lot out of you, especially as you're getting older. My 20s, it was a blast, but then it gets harder. And then you kind of start resenting the fact that you're not earning as much as like your friends, even though I have a master's degree, or not necessarily your friends, but just not earning as much as you could earn. Unless there are very few positions in journalism that where you can become wealthy or have a lucrative, healthy, comfortable lifestyle. So I started thinking, this is perfect. But the thing is, it was really hard to do because I had no interest in business. I just loved helping women. That's really what the passion was. And I knew I really wanted to do it, but it was really scary because no interest in business ever. I never took business courses, and I just feared it too. And sales is a big part of it. And I'm not a salesperson at all. So it was hard. It was a tough thing in the beginning.
A definite leap to a degree into the unknown. It's a story that I've heard often, that you got passionate about something, you got really involved in something, and I very much love the way you introduced the idea that, you know, a lot of people, they get started because they had an issue and then they've worked like heck to work out a solution, and now they can look back and they can help other people, because I see everything on a continuum. It's not that, you know, we're gurus sitting at the top of the mountain and may I just give you the benefit of my wisdom. It's more so that there's people that are coming up behind you. They started a little later. You can see the potholes. You can see where they could, you know, be taken off the path because you've been there. And so it's reaching out and saying, hey, let me help you move a little quicker, or move a little more smoother, but because of the experience that I've had. Yeah.
Exactly. That, exactly. That's what I tell people. You know, I'm because I'm single actually right now, and I work with a lot of single women, and I feel like I'm 5 steps ahead of a lot of my clients. It's not that I have the answers. I've been in happy relationships. I'm not in one now. So I can't say like I have the fairy tale right this second, but I know I'm 5 steps ahead of a lot of the women that I coach and that I work with in matchmaking, just
And
because the journey I've been on.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the real part. That, Karenna, is what I see as us being honest. Like, is my business perfect? Absolutely not. You know, has it progressed enormously over since I started way back in 2003? Has it had lots of twists and turns? Absolutely. But I'm learning all the time. And so I recognize very much that there's people that are coming behind me, not below me, behind me. They started a little later, or whatever the case may be. And so with the evolutions of my business, I can share, which I do as a business mentor and as a masterminder, I can share those insights. Exactly the same with you, you know, because you have those, you know, as you're saying, those 5 steps ahead. I can relate very much to that, to what you were discussing about or describing about, you know, the careers that we loved, that we're enamored with in our 20s, you know, the shine can wear off a little bit once we're into our 30s, and God help us, our 40s and 50s. Things change. We change. The things that we want, the things that, you know, impassion us and empower us are different. And so that's what happened with you. So you were saying that, okay, I'm called into this area, but I'm not really into business. So how did you work with that? How did you go from, here's the idea, here's what I'm doing just on the side, but, you know, I'm going to turn this into my full-time gig? What was involved there? Because there's a big, you know, gap between when you start and being sustained in business like you are. So tell us the story of how you learned.
Yeah, learning the business was hard at first. And plus, I had a lot of fear too. Also about um, just, I guess just fear about, can I help these people? I don't know. Even though I knew I did, I guess charging for it was hard to overcome that. Um, so I started, I did get a website together, and that helped. And I got on Facebook and got onto Facebook groups and started a following. And that kept me going. And thank God I had, the journalism degree in the writing, the love of writing has really helped me a lot because I love to post, and the posts generated a lot of fans, and I got a lot of clients through Facebook, and through my blog and my newsletter. But in the beginning, first few years were really tough, and I had this inkling I really wanted to do this full time, but I needed the income of I was an editor at a legal journal, so I stayed there for a while. But I really wanted to do this, but I just wasn't getting enough clients in the beginning. And I was trying to do like attraction marketing. And some people are lucky out there. Like, you write a book and it gets to the bestseller list, and then you have people calling and calling and calling. I mean, I know people that have gotten lucky that way, and then they just have clients that they don't even have to try to get their clients. They just come. And I wish that I wanted it to be that easy, and I thought maybe it would be easy, but it didn't work that way. I had to really work at the sales end. I realized, as much as I disliked it, I didn't even like being on the phone with somebody, and that was ridiculous. If you're gonna, try to sell people, I mean, I tried to sell people via email. I feel like I'm better on email. I'm just one of those people. I write better than I talk, and I'm not a good convincer, I feel like, or through my words or my phone conversations. But I had a really good friend who, she's a coach in another country. She kept encouraging me to get on the phone. She's like, you got to do what you're uncomfortable with. You have to get on the phone. And she said she had a hard time doing it too in the beginning. She says it's so much easier now, for her. But in the beginning, she had the same problem that I had initially. She was like she's one of these people 5 steps ahead of me. She lives in Italy right now, and was a tremendous help. So I feel like also another part of it is finding people to help you, like a business coach, if you can't afford it, or following a business coach online. Because I feel like there's going to be one aspect of the new business that's not going to come easy. For some people, the sales might come easy, but maybe other things will be harder. The writing part might be harder, or the technology part. But for me, it was the sales part. And like I said, I did get some people just through my posts and through my newsletter. But then they wanted to talk on the phone, and I needed to learn how to close better, if that makes sense.
Oh my God, it does make sense. And I know that what often happens, or what I've seen very much in my clients and other conversations that I've had, is that idea you referred back at the beginning about, there was a lot of fear at first. Can I actually help these people? And that's probably the first bridge that we have to cross when it comes to being comfortable with sales, to be able to own your value, to recognize that, yes, I like to look at you as a bridge from where people are to where they want to be, and you can help them, cross that bridge. And so first and foremost, understanding that what you have has value, can help people are looking for it. And so the sales side of things literally becomes an invitation. I actually teach wholehearted sales conversations to my own mastermind clients, and funnily enough, I only just did the training last week on this particular subject. And what I very much found, and I dare say you're finding this now as you go forward in business, is that sales conversations are only conversations. If you are attracting the people who are in resonance with you, so if you're writing your blogs and you're sending your newsletters, and the people who are reading and accepting those, they resonate with your perspective. They like your style. They feel connected to the way that you look at the world and the way that you offer solutions. Then when you actually invite them forward to talk with you in a sales sense, it's literally just a conversation. There is no pressure there because they already feel an appeal and an attraction and a connection to your style. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And that's what works for me now. That's what I got better at. And I was telling my friend who was helping me out in Italy, who I said was like 5 steps ahead of me. I'm just not a salesy person. I get turned off when people are aggressive with me. I don't want to be that kind of salesperson. And she said, you don't have to be. She said pretty much similar what you just said about, you just offer them, you just talk to them, and when you resonate, it just clicks. She said, think of, and I had a problem too, because I'm like, I don't want them to think I'm slimy, a slimy salesperson and taking their money. She said, think of it like you're bearing a gift.
Yes.
And giving them a gift. And she moved. I remember visually, we were on a Zoom, and she just kind of made a motion that she was giving me a gift. She said, that's what you have to feel like, which is true. I am giving them a gift. I'm giving them my time, and they're giving me their money, which is energy, and we're exchanging energy. It took me a while just to wrap my head around it.
And it makes sense if you think about the experiences that you'd had up until then in terms of being employed, as many of us were. We did our work, and in exchange for that, the paycheck arrived. There was no negotiation. Do I deserve the paycheck this week? Is it okay if I get paid this week? Have I done a good enough job this week? Obviously we would have ebb and flows in our efforts depending on what was happening, but overall it was a very clean and simple exchange. Then emotion gets involved when you're actually putting it specifically on the service that you're providing for this person. And that's where I think us women can get tripped up, and we can find it difficult to ask for the sale. But that's why you're right, that working on it, that seeing it as a gift, that moving into that space where you can have that energetic exchange, as you just so beautifully described it, is the place where we want to get to. But to get to there, to actually have people having those conversations with you, you're already giving them value through your blog posts and other things that you were doing. So talk to us about, how did you decide how I wanted to begin to educate and nurture this following that you were building? What sort of content, or how did you approach helping people recognize that they would benefit from working with you?
Right. The way I got people to really resonate with me was initially through the Facebook posts, which I would post frequently. I feel like it's good to pick one medium, especially when you're starting out, and get good at it and just see how it works for you. And that was really comfortable for me. There was also an audience of women looking for dating advice, and some would go in under fake Facebook profiles just so they could ask me questions, because they don't want their ex-boyfriends to know that they're looking for relationship advice. But that just seemed to be a really good platform. And then the blogging as well, which I often would use the blog in my newsletters. And getting the list is important too. It's funny because everyone has their own way, and that's another thing to think about. A lot of people, you'll hear different things from different people. I've heard, how integral the list is, and it is a big thing to build your list. But I also know a lot of people that do so well on Facebook that they don't worry about their list as much. I know someone that has a list under 100, and she does really well financially through her coaching. It's more through Facebook groups. So the traditional wisdom, I think you've probably heard this too, is through the list. But depending on what you're comfortable with and where your ideal customers are, it could be Facebook. I also have a matchmaking end to my business. So that is more New York City area. So I have to get out there with my foot on the pavement, you know, it's more just physical. And that's how I get that. Most of those clients have been through just networking physically in the New York City area. So for me, it kind of came in several different ways.
And that makes sense. And that idea of you've got to really look at what are the connection points for your business. Like with the matchmaking side of things, yeah, you need that face to face. You need to be out there. You need to be the networking and meeting the people and connecting them up from there. Not that I know a lot about matchmaking, but I'm sure I'll find out more as our conversation continues. But you recognize where your strengths were. You recognize that writing is obviously a forte. And so to write the longer Facebook posts, to write the blogs, to write the newsletters, makes sense for you. And I think playing to our strengths in that way is important. And I love the recognition that you have that, look, there is, you know, accepted strategies. Yes, you know, we've all heard it. The money's in the list, you know, and it's actually not the. I don't like that expression because it reduces the individuals who are in your community or in your database to just a number, where they're all individuals who are looking to solve something. You know, they have an aspiration that they want to reach, or they have a problem that they want help with solving. So to me, it feels a little impersonal to say the money's in the list. But in terms of I think that the potential, the growth of your business is in your community. And I think one of the ways in which, while we hear that advice that it's a great idea to build the list, is because we have control over that. No one can take your community away. I mean, Facebook could decide tomorrow that it's closing your page, and that could be devastating to people. It could really have a very negative impact on their business if they lost those followers that they don't have that, you know, inverted commas, control over. So it's finding that balance, but recognizing what type of marketing resonates with you and aligns with your market is so important. Like, I don't do Twitter. I've got a Twitter profile, it's coming down because my ability to, as you can probably tell, to restrain myself to 144 characters, it ain't going to happen. So much like you, I'd say, because you have that ability to write, so making the most of that makes sense. I mean, did you ever, when you were back at grad school, you know, when you were getting your journalistic qualifications, could you ever have imagined where you would be now in terms of the type of business that you're running?
Never, ever, ever. I actually wanted to, I knew I had done a little print before I went to graduate school at Columbia, and I said, why don't I try broadcast journalism? And I really liked it. And then I was thinking, wow, it'd be really great to be Katie Couric or just a big, famous broadcaster. I could travel all over the world, meet all kinds of cool people and interview people, which is what I loved. But then, and so that was a dream for a while, but then I ended up getting a job in print that I liked, covering crime, and it was fun. I had no idea that, and honestly, I think I might have even looked down on the whole thing of like Love Doctor or Matchmaker. I probably did. I would have thought it wasn't intellectual enough, or, you know, that only flighty people do this kind of thing. And I don't feel that way now at all. You know, I honestly, you know, actually you're bringing back some memories. It's funny because in my family, everyone, my family was an family of immigrants from Europe, and they really wanted us to do well. My brother's a lawyer. My mom, you know, wanted us to do well in school. So I went to, you know, a good graduate school and good undergraduate. And I think I felt the pressure, you know, to do something intellectual and something that they could be proud of. And I feel like if I had told them I was going to be a matchmaker when I was 25 or 20, they would have poo-pooed it. Like, that's ridiculous, you know, or something like that. Matchmaker, dating coach. Back then, I mean, there weren't that many coaches. So even coaching was weird. It was like, what? Like, no, I have a feeling, you know, I needed to kind of really grow as a person where actually, this is another point, something you're bringing up. I think if I was 25, I wouldn't have the guts to even do this, to stand out there and say, I'm a single matchmaker and dating coach. You know, I wouldn't have had the guts at all. Because you have to bare my soul to help people. And sometimes I do, even in public posts, you know, the whole vulnerability post, which really is helpful because your readers and your ideal client can connect with you that way. I never would have been able to do that when I was 25 or 30. I wouldn't have had the guts. So you really have to have the guts and the desire.
Yeah, it's that combination, isn't it? And I think it's one of the benefits, if I can be so bold as to getting older, is
Hmm.
that we can take these, inverted commas, these risks. I think we'll always be a little bit attached to that. What will people think? I think that's it's just a part of our nature of desiring to, yeah, make our parents happy, have approval from others. It's built into a human being's psyche. I don't think we can ever wipe that out. But we become less attached to it. It almost like decreases in importance as we move on in life, and we realize that, god damn it, no one is going to give me permission, and no one needs to give me permission to do the thing that I want to do. I'm going ahead and doing it. I have a daughter, she's 14. I have a son who's 18. I'm excited that the world is more opening up to them. There are more options. I guess when I was going through high school, and this is back in New Zealand, I didn't have the role models of women that just said,
Hmm.
I'm going to do a business like this. We've been so fortunate that the barriers to entry for the business world have really reduced in many ways. The type of businesses that women had back when I was younger were very much bricks and mortar. Obviously, there
Yeah.
was no internet, but you just didn't see the opportunities that we have now. So I think a 25-year-old coming through now, depending on the personality, might indeed go, well, god damn it, I'm going to do this online and this is going to be my business. But it's a big deal for us to step into our power and to step into the things that we want to do now and change our lives. It's a good feeling though, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. A lot of this, it's funny. I do a lot of mindset work with around money and, selling. And it's funny, it makes me a better person in every respect and a more hopeful person because doing money mindset work really gets your head in a good place. So you feel like you can do anything, and not just with your business, with love, with relationships, with fears, with just any dealing with any difficult situation that's not an easy situation. So I feel like, yeah, the having a business is really and really nurturing my business has really helped me grow as a person. um
I think there's no doubt of that. I've got a girlfriend down in Melbourne, one of my belief buddies, as I like to call it, women who share your vision. And so you can lift each other up and you can commiserate and celebrate. And we've talked about how, business development is the biggest personal development trip you will ever be on. It pushes all sorts of buttons. It puts you into those uncomfortable zones, as you've described. It changes you in so many ways. And it's really interesting. I do a lot of mindset work as well. I have a mindset coach because I know how important that part of my growth and expansion is, and taking away some of those limits. But goodness knows, I keep finding more of them and seem to go away overnight. But what sort of mindset work, if you were saying to someone listening now who is going, well, you sound really confident. It sounds like you've jumped over all those hurdles and jumped through those hoops. I'm just starting, or I'm hitting those blocks of, can I do it? Am I good enough at the moment? What would you say to someone who is sitting at that place to encourage them just to keep moving forward?
yeah, that's a good, what I would say to someone that is really starting out and is where maybe I was 5 years ago when I felt hopeless. I really did, because I wanted this thing, and I was a little scared because I knew I wasn't going to stay in journalism full time. It wasn't working for my lifestyle anymore. I knew I needed to do something, but and actually is a good fear, and being scared is kind of a good thing because I had no real other option. I wasn't going to go back to full time journalism. Um, so fear helps, but in terms of getting you on the path to moving ahead quicker, I would say, yeah, getting your head in the right place and believing in yourself. And I think that's where I got stuck for a few years. Um, I, I wish, and that's another thing I wish I had started, because journalism, like I said, I loved it in my 20s and even 30s. And then I wish I had maybe got out of it when I was 35. Instead, I stayed till I was like 45. So I wish I had the guts to kind of leave sooner. But one thing that really has helped me, and I probably did a little bit of this in my 30s too, but is gratitude is huge. Like I try to do it almost every day. Gratitude list, just think of 10 things that I'm, you know, feeling good about, just getting your wavelength, your mind on a good wavelength is really important, because our thoughts can really get in the gutter sometimes, especially when we're going through tough things, and you're going to go through tough things in business. That's why the mindset work is huge. I've gone through a couple tough situations where I can't believe I actually didn't give up. But the reason I didn't give up is because I love it so much, most of it. And I don't want to go back to journalism. I shouldn't say that in a way that's derogatory. It's not that, because I still actually do freelance write for various publications. It's sort of like a hobby now. It's not that I don't like it. It's just I love my own business, and I love what I do. I love helping women, and so I think I would get mindset work. And if you can't afford a coach, um, some people, and I was listening to a coach tell me her story. She said she charged like $75,000 for an amazing coach, and she was so scared. She worked her butt off to earn that money back fast, because she didn't want to be in debt and go bankrupt. But I don't know if that's for everyone. Everyone needs your head in a good place, though. So even if you go to have a good, well, it has to be a friend that's on the same vibe, though, a high vibe person, because if you hang around with complainers, you're never going to move on, or you might, but it's going to be a lot slower. So you just need to be around high vibe people, and maybe even take coaching classes. That if you can't afford like a higher end coach, take a lower end program where you can maybe ask questions on a group call, of a coach whose vibe is really high. Because that's what I think I wish I had it initially, because I was all alone and scared and didn't have enough positive people to talk to.
I think that's so vital. I mean, we've heard that the results that you get in your life is really reflective of the 5 people that you hang around with the most. I can't remember who said that. Some guru said that, but there's an absolute grain of truth in that. And if you're surrounded by naysayers, if you're surrounded by people who don't believe you can do the thing that you want to do, or project their own fears onto you, that can bring you down. So I certainly believe the mindset work's important. It's why I've invested a lot in mindset, certainly not to the tune of 75,000. That one's not within my vicinity, but you can start with a book. You can start with, getting audio series. You can start with group coach. There's so many things you can do, but you can also simply... Yep. You can start with a belief buddy, like I was referring to those. Then I am in a mastermind, and that has been one of the game changers for my business. Is every fortnight, meeting with these women, facilitated by an excellent host, who these women have got my back. I've got theirs. They understand me. They understand my business. They definitely understand my weak points when I get a bit wobbly, and they're there to celebrate. That's been such a change for me, which is why I now host masterminds. It's a core part of my business, because it's the isolation, as you just referred to as well, that can be an absolute killer. Fear and self-doubt, it just seems to multiply when you're all by yourself. And watching your thoughts can be difficult. So I so agree with you to reach out, to get yourself into some sort of a community even, where you can find that you're not alone. I think that's incredibly important. That I've interviewed a lot of people now, and these things that we're discussing here, they come up again and again. That we can be our own biggest enemies in terms of, as you said, those thoughts going into the gutter and running away with us. So really important thing. Now, you had talked about gratitude. I'm a huge believer. I know people can see it sometimes as a bit trite, but I have been keeping gratitude journals for almost 11 years now as a part of, I'm in the recovery movement, and it was very much recommended when I first moved into there. And I really reckon it's changed my head completely.
Oh my God.
It helps you filter for the good, doesn't it? What's been your experience
Totally.
when you talk about gratitude? Let's really dig down into that a moment, because I think it's so powerful. How's it helped you?
Totally. Because some days are tough, and you feel like everything's going wrong in your business, or a lot of things. I shouldn't say. I've never felt like everything is wrong, because I do feel there's always a lot of good, but then some days it's just one after the other, a problem. And I feel like just getting your mind on what you're grateful for, even if it's something small. I try to do 10 a day, and sometimes I forget in the morning, but I try to do it at night if I forget. And if I skip a day, I skip a day, but I try to do it as much as possible. It just gets your vibe up. If you're grateful for something, especially when you're having a bad day. And you kind of see that you really do have a lot. I think a lot of us think we don't have a lot of things, but if you really start listing them, you probably could list thousands of things if you kept going and going.
And it's relative, isn't it? I mean, if you look at where you are today, perhaps even where
Totally.
you were 5 years ago, when you were saying that,
Oh, that's a
there was
great
a
point.
lot of fear there. Yeah.
That's a great point, because somebody said that to me too. Right. Recently, they didn't think they were successful, but looking at them, I'm like, you look really successful on the outside. And, I think you're getting there. You're there. You're so right. You're so much farther than you were. I think it's just we all want everything fast and right away. And it's not going to happen, I don't think, in business. I mean, maybe it happens to some people, but I don't think it happens to everybody. I don't think business is for everybody. You have to really love what you do.
Yeah, that's so important. And that's really wise what you're saying there. That both of those statements there are so important for people to internalize, I believe, is that it doesn't happen fast and it's not always easy. So doing something that you love, even like I adore the work that I do these days. I adore my clients. I adore having these sort of conversations. But that doesn't mean that every day is rainbows and lollipops and, and I'm dancing to the office and delight. I mean, some days it's crap and some days it feels like, you're pushing the proverbial uphill. That's reality. But the thing is, for me, I think it's it's a case of accepting that some days are like that. Being in the recovery movement, the serenity prayer plays a big part of
Oh
my life.
yeah,
Accepting the things that you can't change and changing the things that you can, and having the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's as apt in business as it is in life. If
yep.
it's
Actually, 12 steps are another thing that I encourage clients to go to. And I have myself and that's a great thing to do if you are worried about money, and you want to get your vibe up. I think you can get a lot of good emotional support there, and you can raise your vibe through 12 step
without a doubt.
program.
As I mentioned, I just moved into a new area. I mentioned before we hit record, and so I've had to change the meetings that I go to. And I hadn't been
Mm-hmm.
there for a while because work was busy, the kids were busy. I was busy, but then I finally got my butt off to a meeting on Sunday, and that feeling of the lifted vibe. Even my husband said when I came home, "You've just been to a good meeting, haven't you?" Because look at you,
Yeah,
and I was, and it really lifted the vibe. And that gratitude plays an enormous part in that, an enormous part. And I've got no doubt that what you exude, you attract. And so that's so important to put that effort into lifting the vibe as you've described. Well, let's
exactly.
talk. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts of your business. So, you've built this business because it started on the side. You recognized that it was the thing that was really pulling you and that you wanted to build. So you began to write. You began to Facebook. You're building a list. You're making offers, etc., etc. But why do people come to you? At the end of the day, what's the need that you're fulfilling, and how are you delivering on that? How do you actually work with people? How did you turn your idea into like an actual service?
Yeah, yeah, good point. Basically, I do one-on-one coaching right now. Um, and the need is often kind of what drew me, and that's my specialty. What drew me to it was when I was in my 20s, having these patterns of, for me, it was unavailable men, and not married men or anything, but more so just guys that were playing the field. I did. And I actually know what it is now. You looking back, it's just so obvious. Like maybe I feared commitment, and I didn't want that attention. You kind of attract what you are, and I was ambivalent, so I was getting ambivalent guys, and I didn't see a lot of happy marriages growing up. Or didn't have a lot of models, so I was a little bit ambivalent. So I ended up with ambivalent guys, but I still got hurt by them, even though I was ambivalent. It was just so. That's the kind of women that I see. Women that are just getting hurt by men, maybe giving too much, caring too much. So I help them a lot with boundaries, which actually the 12 steps really help with. And that's why I encourage a lot of women to go. A lot of, some women don't want to go. Some women, it takes them a while to get up the nerve to go, but it really helps with boundaries. And that's a big thing I find with a lot of women. They have bad boundaries with men and everyone in general. It's not just with men, but they get really hurt by men. So that's how I work with them one-on-one. I'm actually working on developing programs so I can serve more people. And that's actually another good business decision too. You can grow your business by developing programs. And so you don't have to be one-on-one all day and all night. You can sell several programs that have already been packaged up. So that's what I'm working on. And I'm actually working on a book, which is another great idea. If you can get a book or even out, it's a great marketing tool. So I'm working on an ebook, and I'm going to self-publish it on Amazon for women, a guide for women to understand men, because I feel like a lot of women, even married women, don't understand men, and that's where I think the problems come from.
There's a quite a well-known book here in Australia, and I'm sure it's gone worldwide as well, which is what is it? Women are from
Well,
Mars and men are from Venus, or is it the other way? No, men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
oh, that's huge. That's one of the books that I really respect out there. There's a lot of dating advice that I don't believe in, but I love that. I love him because that's sort of kind of how I feel. I feel like he gets men, and I try to teach women to get men, because a lot of women don't. They don't understand men. They and I didn't really understand men either. That's why it's such a passion of mine. I want women to understand men so they don't get as hurt by men. So that's my
Hey, look,
big.
I think it's still relevant within relationships as well. I've been married for 22 years, and sometimes I look at my husband and think, I really don't understand you. So maybe I should be reading that one as well. But now I just want to rope back around here for a moment, because you started off our conversation with talking about how your own experiences and what you were frustrated with and what you learned, and now you're teaching others. And that's coming through again here. You're referring back to the patterns that you saw in your own youth, and you're seeing that other women are having that same experience. And so you can give them the assistance there. You can help them shorten the journey to avoid the potholes, etc. So that's a recurring theme that comes up in our conversation and many other podcast interviews I've done as well. And that's so important for people who are listening to understand, not to undervalue your own skills and your own experiences. That fear, that self-doubt, I've heard a lot of people thinking, well, yeah, but who's going to want to hear from me? Well, we do, because you're like us, you get us. And you mentioned empathy as being so important. We're talking about vulnerability, but I think the core connection factor is the empathy. I've walked in your shoes. I know what it's like. And, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I can show you, help you take steps to get there. That really is the crux of what it is that you're saying, isn't it? In terms of understanding what your clients need.
That's a good point. When women talk about being discouraged, and there's so many women in New York in their 30s, 40s, 50s that are single, who are single, 60s, I mean, all 70s even. I mean, it's just rampant, especially in cities. I notice smaller towns, I feel like there's more of a need to, people are more hooked up. But yeah, it's rampant, and I know exactly what they're going through, and I get it. I get how to help them out of it. I know how to help their mood. Yeah, it's hard sometimes, because there is a lot of discouragement out there, but I've definitely been there, and I think a lot of people are drawn to me for that reason. They know I didn't get married when I was 21 to my high school sweetheart, and not that that's the bad, it's just that person would have no idea how hard it can be out there, as a single woman in New York City or Sydney or wherever.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the point, that it is that empathy that connects you with your clients, and that understanding that you don't have to be all things to all people. You need to create, as you described it, your following. You need to stay true to what you believe in, what you stand for, what you want for your clients, and to share your experiences. Then I like how, and this is a really important, another point, how you were saying, writing a book can be a great marketing tool, and it certainly can, but that point of that it won't necessarily happen overnight, but starting one-on-one with clients and really getting comfortable with the way in which as it's often called, your signature system, the way that you do things, the way that you take people from A to Z, from where they are to where they want to be. I could go and talk to another dating coach, and she would have a completely different approach to that. So it's you becoming aware of how you work best with people. And then after that, yes, you could start a more leveraged approach.
Mm-hmm.
You could create a program where you could bring in, half a dozen women at a time, because I think there's also good solidarity. As we talked about, isolation's a dream killer. Well, if you have people together, whether it be to learn about understanding men, to learn about how to date, to learn about anything, if we're working together in a small group, that can also be incredibly reassuring, that we're not alone and we can learn from each other. So that would be probably the next step on your business horizon, is creating more of a combined course or a self-study. How do you think you'll approach it?
Exactly. That's the next step. After the book, which I'm aiming for September, after the book, I'm aiming to do more packaged coaching, and to leverage the group through the coaching. So what I would do is, one thing that several coaches that I've gotten coached by have done, and it really works out well, is they create a group on a Facebook group. And I'm sure many of the listeners have probably been in some Facebook groups, and I've had my own Facebook groups as well, for other reasons. But it's a great way to get the participants in the course getting to know each other and helping each other out. And as a coach, I could do a Facebook Live once a month or once a week, send out modules. These are some of the ideas that I'm thinking of as I anticipate how it's going to work. The modules could be video, or they could even be just MP3s, but with lots of content, obviously. And I want to be there for them too. So because I know sometimes people get so big and all they do is they send out videos and MP3s, and they're not there at all. But I would like to do at least group coaching, be there for them on a group coaching call or a video call. Who knows? Maybe someday I'll get so big where I'll just be speaking in public. And I know people that have done that. Coaches that have gotten so big, they're just on the speaking circuit right now, and they don't do any one-on-one coaching or even group coaching anymore. I don't know if I would love that, because I really love the coaching. I love the one-on-one. So who knows how it's going to happen, or maybe just take a few high-end coaching clients.
Well, it's the evolution, isn't it? As we were talking before, and as we're bringing this conversation to its natural close on this occasion. But if you looked back, and you couldn't imagine that you would be here where you are today. So I'm sure if we picked up this conversation another 5 years, you would have evolved to a different level, doing different things. But you're going to stay true to what feels good, as you just said there. I love the one-on-one coaching. And I think the most important thing that I've heard, or one of the many important things I've heard from you this morning, is I want to be there for my clients. There's that desire for that genuine connection. And to me, that's the essence of a next chapter business, is that you have this desire, you have this genuine want to change things, to help, be a catalyst of change in your client's life. You want to help, you want to have an impact, you want to make a difference. And it's that empathy and that desire, which I reckon is a real big part of creating a sustainable business. Then we can wrap the marketing activities around it. You can do the Facebook, you can do the newsletter, you can do the blogging, the podcasts, whatever it is that you do to provide content and nurturing and information and connection to the clients. But ultimately, it's about you really caring and wanting to make a difference. That comes through. I think it shines through in any business, and that's when your audience really feels, quite rightly so, that you can make a difference in their lives, and that's when they reach out. So methinks you're on the right path.
Thank you. It sounds great. It's true. It's funny, yes. Though, as much as you care, you have to get good at the business end, or
totally.
You can't, if you want to make any money. I mean, you could you could do one-on-one coaching and out of the goodness of your heart, and that's great, but if you can afford it. But if you really need to feed yourself and your family, you have to kind of figure out the business end.
Yep, we got to do that part as well. And that's why it's so important to be working out the business side around something that you're passionate about. Otherwise, then it's really hard otherwise. I mean, I used to have a marketing agency, built that really big, did great, had full-time staff, the whole bit, really nailed this marketing stuff. This was back before social media was really big. I stopped my agency into 2012. So, but I got to that stage, much like you with the journalism side. I started it, I loved it, the growth was there, but I eventually realized that there was something else. It wasn't hitting the buttons any longer. And so coming into a new way of doing business where I felt, again, impassioned about it, it made the business side easier. But yes, we have to wrap our head around it. And we wish it would happen quickly, but it does happen if you do keep putting one step in front of the other. And as you've mentioned, and we've discussed, how important it is to have the headspace clear as well. So there's I guess it's like a trilogy, isn't it? There's the thing that you're passionate about, getting the business skills, and having your head in the right place. Those three pieces are so important.
And then not giving up, because it can be easy to give up. And sometimes if you have the gift of fear or gift of hitting rock bottom, if you have the gift of being hungry, nowhere else to go, sometimes that even helps people, because you have to make it work.
Yeah, we've certainly heard those stories online of people who, it's often called the gift of desperation. Like, I had to make it work. There wasn't an alternative. And I guess it's different for everybody. I mean, I have people working with me on all different sorts of scales, people who don't have to work, but they want to. It's important to them, but it's a choice. And on the other end of the scale, people who, this is it. They are the breadwinners. They need to make this work. And then there's everyone on the continuum in between. So it's understanding clearly where it is that you sit on that continuum, because that will very much influence the way that you build, develop, and market your business, without a doubt.
Exactly. And some people give up because it's hard. You have to kind of put up with, in the beginning, I think even, you have to kind of be willing to fail. You're going to fail a little bit. You kind of keep going. You got to keep going in spite of failure.
Absolutely, because all failure is it's feedback. It's like, someone said to me once that failure is an event, not a person. It's an event, not a person. So if something doesn't work, okay, learn from that. Look at it, work out with as much hope as you can. What was it that didn't work? But don't take it as a reflection on yourself personally. It might just mean that you need to develop a skill set that you don't have yet, or you might have to outsource it. So yeah, I loved that. It's an event, not a person, and I've always remembered that. I wish I could remember who said it, but it's definitely something that I've adopted, because not everything that I do by any means turns out perfectly. I've got a lot of stuff figured out these days, but not everything works. So I like looking about it. It's a work in progress. We are works in progress. This is an evolution that we are involved in, rather than a revolution.
Yeah, and I feel like you can learn from every failure, and I look back and I know I have gotten so many things out of the failure, even though I didn't see it at the time, or want to see it at the time.
Now that's where the old self-compassion comes in as well, and the benefit of hindsight, of being able to look back and gather those lessons together. Well, my darling, this has been a wonderful, wide-reaching conversation. I mean, the main things we're really wanting people to understand is that it takes time. Without a doubt, it takes time, but dealing with that fear and that doubt is such an important part of the journey. And so bringing in that gratitude, as you've spoken about, is so important. But recognizing that the business side, needing to wrap your head around the business side, it's essential. Unless, of course, this is a hobby, which in and of itself is fine. But you need to make that choice and then make that commitment, because we don't want you to give up. What it is that you have, that unique set of skills and experiences that you have, those insights other people need. So it's important to get visible and let people know that you can help them move around those potholes. So if someone listening to us this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, whenever you happen to be listening to the conversation, how can they come and find you? Can you tell us about where we can find you online in this big wide world?
Sure. I'm at KarennaAlexander.com. That's my website, Karenna Alexander.com. And I have all links on there to my Facebook page, which is where I give a lot of tips, my Facebook fan page, and my Twitter, and you can email me there too. And you can get on my newsletter list. If you live in New York even, you could get into my database, my matchmaking database. I also offer a publicity course too, because that's one way that I use the journalism, and that just sort of came about organically a few months ago. And because I love working with the press personally, I'm not intimidated by it because I used to be a member of the press. So now I'm teaching business owners how to get press. So that's a new thing I didn't mention, but I love doing it. And
Well, I love
yeah.
the blends, and actually, that just before we end up, that is an important note. Like you said, you're doing freelance. You're doing some freelance journalism. You've got the PR course. You've got the matchmaking and the love work, and it's that beautiful blend. I think it's important for people to realize that just because you're going in this direction doesn't mean you have to cut off every other branch.
And I
It's a,
thought I did have to, which is really interesting. And I almost did cut it off completely. And then I realized every morning, one of the things I love to do was send out pitches to reporters. Because in the beginning, I wanted to get press for my business. And I realized I'm spending way too much time on this, but I love it. So I kept doing it. And then I kept getting a lot of press because I'm comfortable. It's one of those things where my mind was in a good place because I like journalists because I used to be one.
yeah, you understand them. That's
I
that
wasn't
empathy.
nervous about that. And it's
Yeah.
almost like selling too. I was trying to sell them pitches, but for me, that kind of selling wasn't hard. The selling for me that was hard was selling a client, which, just that's where I needed to grow my headspace.
Yeah, that was the starting point. But it is important to recognize that niching is important. So, you have a niche in terms of the women that you take care of, but that doesn't mean that you have to cut the other branches off the tree. Like there's a couple of things that I'm still involved in that are not my core, my most core business, and I'm not letting them go because I love them. And that's okay. I think that at the end of the day, one of the core themes that's come through our conversation is that you don't have to follow the rules. You need to have some key puzzle pieces in place. Yeah, there are some key business pieces. I call them the big picture checklist of business. But then you get to create how you want it to be. You get to determine how you want it to be. That is the beauty of being an entrepreneur in today, and this day and age. We get to create the recipe. We get to decide what ingredients are in this masterpiece that we're creating. And that feels good. I love that fact that we can have that creativity.
Exactly.
Well, Karenna, thank you so much for your time that you've spent with us today and for being very open and honest about what the journey's been like for you and what are the things that have tripped you up? What are the areas that you needed the growth in and you recognised that and you took the action? So often these themes come through again and again in these conversations. And so I want to continue having these chats with people so that the woman who is standing on the edge of her next chapter gets that energy, gets that hope, gets that recognition that it's possible. It's not easy, but God, it's enjoyable and it's very, very possible. So one last question for you, if I may, to leave us with. A book. I know you're writing a book, but we talked a lot about mindset. And tell us, what's a book that you have read that you've particularly found helpful when it comes to boosting your belief or helping you continue
Oh my
to move
God.
forward?
Yes, it's a great question. And, I didn't get to mention this, but one thing that I did a lot that helped me with mindset work is I got books on audio. And when I was on walks in the car for hours, I would listen to mindset, keeping my vibe up. That was crucial because in the car too, your mind can go all kinds of negative places. But in the one book that I still listen to over and over, Jen Sincero, I think it's called, she has two books. One I think it's How to Be a Badass, and the other one is How to Be a
Yes.
Badass
With money. You
with
are a
money.
badass with money. Yep.
And the money one is the one that I listen to over and over and over, and I still listen to it over and over, and it just keeps my head up in the right place. All the right things she says. She's great. She's one of those coaches that I don't believe does one-on-one anymore. She's just on the circuit, speaking circuit, but her stuff, it just keeps my head in a good place.
And so it probably doesn't
Great.
surprise you to hear that You Are a Badass is actually on my bookshelf. I love the book from Jen Sincero. I'll make
So
sure
you
we
got
pop
it too.
I've got it too. So I'll make sure
Awesome.
we pop some links on the page so that our listeners can also go and learn how to be a badass.
Yeah, she's got great ideas, and like I said, it's not just for it just makes you more hopeful about other things
It does. It was
when your mind
wonderful.
is not in the right place.
Well, thank you, sweetheart. Again, I really
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time. And I know people listening would have got a lot out of this. So I look forward to staying connected.
Oh, good, definitely. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're really welcome. And to you, my lovely listener, I really do hope that a lot of the conversation that Karenna and I have had today has sparked some ideas for you, has helped you see that you can look back and take from your past experiences and bring that wealth of insights and things that you've worked through, things that you've solved. You now have the tools and the insight to extend your hand to help others, to help them shorten that journey, to help them move around those potholes, and never stop valuing that experience that you have, because people need it and they need you and they need your perspective and your empathy. That's exactly what Karenna is using out there to build her own business, her knowledge and her own experiences. It's what I do as I'm building my business, is I'm helping other women who really want to step into next chapters but are not quite sure how to take that move, or they've started a business but they want to expand it, they want to take it to the next level. And as we talked about a lot in today's episode, that feeling of isolation where your head can start running away from you can be a real killer. So how will you address that? Maybe you will get started by reading that book that we've been talking about, and I'll put the links in the show notes to Jen Sincero, You Are a Badass. It is a great book. Or maybe you're ready to take a step further. And I'd encourage you, if that is something that appeals to you, then take a look at the masterminds that I run on a regular basis. You can find out more about what's involved by going to angelaraspas.com/circle. I call them next chapter success circles. They are masterminds in the truest sense, but you're always working alongside in small groups of next chapter women. Now that means someone in their 40s and beyond who is stepping into and expanding into something new. So if that feels like you'd like to stop the isolation and build your business up in our company, I'd love to have a conversation and see if it's a good fit for you. But as always, thank you for spending your time on the Next Chapter podcast. I know it's precious and there's many things you could be doing. So I very much appreciate that you chose to lend us your ears, your head, and your heart today. And I look forward to speaking with you again very soon. Take care. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Pop over to angelaraspas.com to subscribe to the show and leave a review. And whilst you're there, you can also enjoy valuable free resources, including show notes and downloads, along with the Next Chapter community, where you can connect with other wholehearted women on the same journey as you. We'd love to welcome and support you as your next chapter unfolds. See you next time.